welcome to The Pile in the Dust Factory shop. Today, I'm going to talk to you about helmets, and I have an awful lot to say about helmets. We're going to talk about the history of our Dust Factory Marine helmet, how it started off from my fever dream in 2022, trying to go and make this thing happen before a con in 3 weeks, and how it's evolved from there into something that I'm significantly more proud to show off and have out in the world. So, the very first helmets we made, I can't actually show you because they're gone. They are sold off to old customers when we sold our first suits. That was what got us into this thing in the start. We were like, well, maybe we'll just list this thing online and see if anyone's interested in it. And then someone just bought it pretty quick, more than we were, a lot faster than we were expecting. So that got us into this whole mess. But Joe, if you're out there, we still think about you. I hope the suit's holding up great. Anyway, the original helmets were just plastic PLA 3D prints because that's the printers we had at the time. The only resin printer we had was about this big, a little Anycubic Photon. It was a different time. So these helmets were printed on what I call Old Shaky. My Anycubic Chiron giant format printer would print 400 by 400 by 450 mils. It was amazing. But because it was so bloody huge, it would shake itself to death if you ran it at like any normal, reasonable 3D printer speed. Which made it did terrific detail because you couldn't run it fast anyway. But it would bridge things like you wouldn't believe. But it just... Those helmets, Ian, how many tries did we take to make those helmets? Did we have 2 ones that died in the middle, and I think 3.5, because we had one that worked.
Yeah.
We had one that died about 3/4 of the way through on my printer. And then we had one that died on yours, and we managed to save it.
Yes. And that was the one that had the hole in it, and we ended up filling the brim with like half a liter of epoxy.
Just a massive amount of epoxy resin, getting really uncomfortably warm when we remembered that that's an exothermic reaction when it cured.
Yeah, you're holding
I think it warped the plastic a little bit as it was
it absolutely... Well, I remember holding it and being like, oh, right. Like 2-part epoxy heats up when you put it together.
We're just holding this like
this is made of thermoplastic. Oh,
yeah.
Oops.
Oh dear. Anyway, long story short, we should have just gone for the super glue and noodles, but it worked out. With a lot of sanding and a lot of epoxy coating, we got those original helmets done. They were light. They were fine enough. They were a pain to mask. They were a little rough around the edges because they were just old 3D printer technology.
Well, we also had coated them in Smooth On.
That's true. We did all our original Marine suits. We coated all with Smooth On because we're like, we want to make these nice and smooth. It's the future. Everything's shiny in the future.
Yeah, we don't.
That was a mistake.
We don't want any layer lines.
Yeah, we wanted to avoid layer lines, and we thought the easiest way to avoid layer lines would be to blow them out with, put on.
What was the actual product? It's a Smooth On. It's a 2-part epoxy resin, but they had marketed it specifically as
for a 3D printer.
Yeah, as some kind of 3D printer smoothing resin, and ultimately, all it really did was generate. Well, I mean, it did. We did get nice smooth.
I feel like we had to do the same amount of sanding we would do normally anyway.
Yes, but it also made the kitchen smell like fish.
Yeah, it was the thing they don't advertise to you is it's like not a little bit like fish. And admittedly, we did have a lot of marine armor we were doing.
Yeah,
but like stunk out the kitchen levels of fish. Like it has not been that bad since teenage Ian and John tried vacuum forming in my parents' oven.
Well, it was like, and you gotta, the mental picture I'll paint for you is, it's the middle of summer, it's like 22 degrees, and the windows are open, and there's piles and piles of 3D prints on the table, and like oven racks with aluminum foil, and everything smells like fish.
Yeah, because it would drip down on
it was awful.
Catch the drips.
It was awful.
Anyway, use filler primer, you'll be happier.
Yes.
That was a bit of a tangent. That's okay. That'll give us something to rant about. The long story short, the end to this is that basically we realized that if you want to make detailed helmets that are easier to paint and easier to finish, do it in resin. Now, of course, there's a whole ton of problems with that as well, because resin is heavy. Generally speaking, it's not as strong.
It also smells.
It also smells. That's true. You're right. That's the other thing. So we got a large format 3D printer. We got an Anycubic M3 Max, because that's the year that everything was named the M3. We got one of those. It was terrific, but it moved too much resin, whatever first starting resin we had with it, it stunk in out of the basement.
Oh my god, it stunk the house out.
We had a fume hood, we had a blower going out the window, and whatever evil resin we had, and could not use it here. So that delayed us a little bit until finally I moved and had a spot where I could go and pipe it directly outside where my living area. I had it all contained in its own room, in its own grow tent, with a dedicated ventilation fan. And now I've got two of them, and I still have no problems, and I don't think I've even been poisoned a little bit. So obviously it's working. I'd probably noticed by now. Anyway, once we got a big resin printer, then we unlocked a lot of options. The thing is, a big resin printer is still not going to print something this heavy, this big. This thing, I remember when we weighed this, is this like 7 pounds?
I think it's actually 9.
Yeah, I remember it was like, Ian had collected an actual ballistic, like Russian Alton helmet or something, and we weighed 2 of them just because we were curious, and it was like, oh, these are actually pretty close to each other.
I think it was heavier.
It might have been.
I think it was actually heavier than the Alton.
Yeah. So long story short, in order for this resin to be strong enough, this was just, this wasn't basic resin. This was, I think, any cubic ABS. Like we knew from the beginning, we at least wanted something a little tougher than your normal.
Well, when we had first bought them, the stuff that stunk really bad was any cubic ABS like black.
Oh,
it was specifically the black formulation that smelled and off gas really horribly.
Yeah.
So that just like, that was, you couldn't operate the machine unless, like, when John says we had a dedicated venting system, like we knew the dangers of resin 3D printing, and we were like, oh, okay, so we'll get the dedicated fan. We did all our calculations on like how much CFM.
We used the smoke machine, and we're like, okay, it'll evacuate this much air in this space, and it still was not enough.
No, it was awful. It was absolutely awful. So make sure you're prepared for that sort of thing. I think long ago that formulation is gone. I really don't think people use that anymore, but that specifically, that very first helmet, I think, is done in that black ABS.
Yeah.
Because when we bought the printer, we also bought like 10 liters of it or something.
Yeah, we had big projects we wanted to do. We wanted to make helmets, so we went through a ton of the stuff, and it was good. It got us this far. Anyway, so the thing with these helmets is when you're building them on a big resin printer, there are resin printers big enough to do this, but not at any sort of reasonable hobbyist, semi-professional price point. That's never going to happen. So we had to go and split this thing up. And originally, I had never designed the helmet to be split up. It was basically, can I get the shape right and make it happen in one piece on a plastic 3D printer? So we had to go and find ways to go and slice this thing up so it would fit on a still reasonably large, but not that huge, resin build plate. So from the very beginning, or I guess the beginning of the resin helmets, these were cut up into some main components. We've got what I call the brow wedge. Sometimes I'll call it the visor, but it's the wedge. Then we've got the main black helmet dome that everything attaches to. We have this part here, which we call the toilet bowl. Really, it should be the toilet seat, but toilet bowl stuck. And then all these other external armor panels, those also go on. And this helmet, all of these are just glued on. Because the idea was you'd paint them and you glue them on and there's your helmet, it's done. And that was fine enough for the prototype, but pretty soon we realized if you ever wanted to go repair things or repaint things or do any sort of maintenance, it was nice to have them removable. So this thing is one glued together piece. Oh, that's the other thing. It's glued together.
Yeah.
And we were hurt by epoxy and vowed never to use it again.
Well, it's like, it has a nice seat, like the dome, the top dome. And
like there's mechanical fits. The one thing I should say is we don't have flat surface butting to flat surface because we made that mistake in the past on our old marine suits, and that was terrible.
But we did sell.
Everything nests together. But we did go and ship one of these things that got absolutely manhandled in the mail, and it was cracked when the poor guy got it. It was not in good shape, and some of the, I don't know if it got cold or hot, but some of the epoxy had split on this seam, and like we were embarrassed and felt bad, and it was not awesome. So we're like, okay, we're gonna come at this again. This was a good starting point. Let's make another helmet that just assembles together that little bit nicer. So this here is the kind of, I guess, current generation version of the resin helmet. I guess this helmet's probably a year and a half old, but the resin helmet's mostly been settled now because honestly, it just works great.
Yeah, there's might be a few in between little details
like minor fitment changes mostly, but really it's all here.
Because we've sold quite a number of them between then and now. And
oh, absolutely, yeah. So there's always a couple of changes.
Yeah, I don't want to say each one is a little bit different, but it's there have been tiny little revisions. A hull will gain maybe a little bit more tolerance or something like that. But fundamentally they are the same helmet.
The big change actually is in this mechanism here. So another thing is, because we knew these resin parts were not brittle, but we knew that there was a chance someone breaks it or, someone's cousin rolls their helmet down the stairs. It might be nice to go and have replaceable parts on these helmets. And we started with that idea in mind. We just didn't execute it as well as we probably should have at the start. But you can see here there's this separate panel. And this microphone pod, this has all the mechanics and the spring-loaded thing for your spring-loaded microphone boom. And the idea was that if this ever got jammed or something broke, you could at least go and replace this pod.
Yeah, and it was going to be a lot easier to send...
replacing the entire helmets, it would be better on everyone. The problem was you'd still need to go and snip and re-crimp in or solder your wires. But the idea was starting to get there. The other thing I should say is that these goggles were always intended to be in the helmet since the very first resin versions.
Actually, can you put those on the very first one?
It should fit. But these, I'll do it in a second when I have my hand free. But this was always the plan to put these here, but we were never quite sure how to make the goggles.
Yeah, we had a long-standing plan to do vacuum forming, and we just never got our vacuum former rebuilt, and people with vacuum formers never got back to us about quotes, and it was just,
it was always a later problem. Yeah. We had other improvements to make that were more important. But let's see if I can make this fit. So from the start, you can see, actually this one still has its fillers in. So there's a slot in here, and the idea was that it would have these tangs to go and keep it from bending forward, and some little locking lugs to go and give it something to clip into, or this one. At some point we stopped giving these little fillers out because they're redundant and the goggles come with the helmet. But I think on this helmet it won't actually fit on the very first prototype, because it doesn't have these lugs on them. It has only the magnet. It has the shape is the same, but the idea was the magnet would be enough.
Right.
But when we actually designed these, I'm like, no, the magnet won't be enough. So in earlier helmets, still the lugs appear. You'll never be able to see this because it's black on black in the camera. But in here, even on these helmets from 2 years ago, they have the 2 lugs in them at least. So they were future-proof that way. But the very original helmets can't do it.
Yeah, there's only 1 or 2 of those out there in the world.
Yeah.
So.
And I guess so far, no one who owns those have asked us for goggles. So.
And we'd
make you one, or we'd make it happen.
Yeah.
Anyway, so the other big thing that started happening with this generation of helmet, and this still took a little bit too, but it came on reasonably quick, was making the armor bolt in. Because, again, like I said, you're very limited once you've glued the thing in. If you need to repaint it or something cracks or happens to warp for whatever reason, you leave it in your hot car. It just kind of sucks to do, and also clamping a big glue surface like that was just obnoxious. On our old prototype, you can see there's a little bit here. This back armor has just lifted a hair because over time it's just... Actually, it might not even be over time. It just might have never quite been there. It's been too long for me to even remember that.
And also, when we were making them, these are... Fundamentally, these are all thermoplastics. Even the resin will deform in hot temperatures.
Yep.
And so, we've had resin parts come out of the printers warped, or during the painting process while we're outside in the sun in the summer, right? Things will heat, and so it was just better to have the mechanical connection than to rely on glue.
Yeah.
Glue has hurt us so much in the past that if you can secure something with a mechanical connection, just do it. It's not worth it.
Yep. So, other things with this is some other parts started to get broken off of this helmet to make it a little easier to finish, a little easier to work with. These things on the side I call the ear tombstones. The helmet is covered in tombstones. That's the shape. Originally, those were part of this as well, part of the big black dome. And then we realized it would be a lot easier if that was a flat surface that had something glued on. And then later again, we're like, wait a minute. Why are we gluing this on? We just said how much we hated glue. And then we started to go and bolt in these other pieces as well. I think most of the resin helmets still have this glued one because this part just gets on and becomes part of the black dome. That became much more of an issue when we started doing our active hearing stuff that might need more things coming in and out. I guess I should talk about the headsets. Even this original marine helmet was built with a headset because we knew from the very beginning I wanted to make something really cool. I wanted it to be functional, and very first prototype we got that in, and it worked first try, which actually got me into a lot of trouble because I had accidentally wired it partially wrong, and thanks to a flaky connection it was working anyway. And for probably our first 3 commercial helmets, I was like, why will this stupid microphone not work? I was just tearing my hair out until I realized I had fundamentally screwed up, and now everything's been fine again. But you can see in here in these helmets, one thing that the 3D printing has going for it is compared to like a cast resin shell or something, we have a lot of volume to work with. So it's nice to go and integrate systems into the helmet. So on this microphone pod, we've got a panel here that lets you access all the springs. And then inside the helmet, you can go and see these access panels where all the wires get tucked in there. And now we still use that same system. That's barely changed since the original, besides, again, 1 or 2 clearance fixes. On the original helmets, we used these speakers, and I guess if you have a resin helmet out there, you still use these speakers. Because honestly, they're perfectly good speakers. We found a okay deal on a solid headset where we can actually go and use its same microphone and speakers. It seemed like a great idea at the time. You get one package, you tear them apart, you put them in. Those turned out to be more trouble than it was worth, and now we've moved to something a little easier to work with and a little more sustainable, honestly, because they're just, depending on if you could find those things available. We've moved on to the active hearing, which I think is much nicer.
Yeah, it was a case of it was a decent headset, but a lot of the wiring was it was like a braided kind of nylon copper wire, and it was very difficult to make good electrical connections with it because you had to kind of burn off the nylon, and there were actually not a lot of strands of copper once you did that.
No, the wiring was the limitation. The speaker drivers themselves are great once you manage to actually get your connection. And I love them because they're a very low profile. They fit in great in here. You'll notice that this version of the helmet, well, I guess the prototype doesn't have any pads in it because we just took our pads out, but it's never had any ear cup or anything like that. Same with this generation, because honestly, the helmet's reasonably tight on your head, and these just had good sound. We weren't trying to do noise canceling, so we didn't really need a solid ear seal in the same way you might want on these later helmets. But I still like these speakers, and I love the way they're kind of cool and oval shaped and fit.
Yeah, and they kind of bulge out a little bit with the grooves, and
they're actually, I really like the look of them, but we've just moved on to new technology as we keep piling things into here. But other things about this, I should mention that it's not obvious at all, and I feel like sometimes people may miss this. In here, in these little detailed doodad wedges, there's actually underneath the rubber, there's a push-to-talk mute button. I guess push-to-talk is wrong. It's the opposite of push-to-talk. It's a toggle on-off for the microphone. The problem we found with that is depending on if you've plugged this into a phone or a computer, sometimes they will interpret that differently, which I find really weird, but depending on like how your aux cable is set up or how your phone is looking at things. We've had some success for my phone, never wanted it to work, and Ian's was fine, and then we plug it into a computer, and it's...
Yeah, there's some ongoing weirdness just with like volume levels and plug wiring that just like some devices work really well, some devices don't work.
Yeah.
And it's kind of confusing as to why.
Yeah. So we never shipped a helmet that didn't work because we obviously we didn't want them to open up their box, plug their thing in and think, this sucks, this isn't working. So we'd go and we'd test them on a couple different phones, and we wound up realizing we could go and plug it into Ian's computer, and if Audacity and Discord were picking the thing up, then obviously the helmet was working because it doesn't have any other microphone plugged in, so it's not like, oh, maybe the phone mic is faking us out. Right, so that's our standard test we started going to, and that's always been fine. But again, we've also made upgrades to this whole system. The other thing Ian talked about, like the various versions of this, various holes changing and things like that. One thing we played with a lot is how this microphone pod mounts in. Because we wanted it to be strong, but we needed it to be replaceable, and it gets pretty thin up here, right? You can see that as this has its nice little swoop, there's only so much room to go and At first we started off gluing in nuts, and that was fine, but they had a tendency to get a little wiggly after a while, and you have to go and glue them back in, which is annoying.
And depending on like the size of your head, sometimes when you take it off, it would kind of like rub on your cheeks, and then the leverage of it rubbing on your cheeks would sort of pull the mic pod off.
Yeah, They got looser over time. So to anyone who has those still, I hope you've just glued the thing on. We'll just send you a new pod at some point. You can crack it off if that ever dies on you. But what we started doing is we started realizing no, gluing things sucks. Bolt things to it, whatever. And realizing we could bolt into resin once we printed it strong enough and swapped to better ABS-like, plus resins and mixes with other toughnesses in there. We realized just bolt the thing. So this, Ian's helmet and my old resin helmet at home, you can actually see that this is a drop-in modification where we finally said, screw it, and drilled straight through and bolted straight through the thing. And because the surface was a little weird and not meant for that, we're using these rubber washers to just kind of even out the thing. And it's actually worked pretty well. But again, it's just redundant now on our new systems.
Yeah, those aren't there. It's just because we finished our helmets fairly early, and then we kept making helmets because people keep buying them, and we never updated ours.
Yeah.
Actually, until now.
Until now, we're just getting to it. But it's actually a lot of our stuff, even our own marine kit we have, because we built it for ourselves first. Everyone else who's bought a marine kit after we built ours, which is everyone but two, has a nicer marine suit than we have.
Yeah, there's always little weird tells on the suits. And it's just like some of the ones that we've sent out are just so much nicer than our own ones. So it's like if you see pictures of us and you think, oh, that's a really nice suit, that's good sewing, whatever, they get way better.
Yeah. Which is why we're finally sitting down to go and upgrade ours.
Yeah,
because it's I feel like, oh, we should go and take reference pictures of this. And it's like, oh, well, that's 2 generations of pad out of date. And
yeah, well, I mean, even the sewing process got better.
Oh, absolutely. Like the sewing got more durable. We've got just better techniques, more consistent, I guess is the best way to put it.
I think that maybe the big milestone would have been switching from 2-inch Velcro on some of the large connections to the 4-inch.
Oh, yeah.
That would be the major milestone in my mind of when processes changed and it became really, really better to make.
Yes.
Also, you should show them I wonder if you can see on here when the name tag got detachable.
Oh, yeah. So actually, this is another thing. The name tag I had always imagined as being something you could, how do I put this? If we are selling helmets, it's inconvenient for me to have to go and print a toilet bowl that has a name on it. It would be nicer if I could go and have this sitting around and then drop a name tag in later if that's convenient. So this one, even here in the original prototype, you can see there's a small rectangle in here that this barcode is set into. The problem was, and I should have known better at the time, but you live and you learn, this was just a nightmare to finish cleanly, because this is being drawn out of the resin vat like this, and it's all supported up here, and to go and sand and fill all of this kind of lumpiness here was kind of nightmarish. And if there are 2 things you should know about Dust Factory philosophy, it's that John hates sanding and John hates masking. And that's the helmet. It's resin because I hate sanding. The parts come off because I hate masking. There it is.
Actually, there's one other really cool thing about that one that I've never done since because it's just never been worth my time, is I backfilled the barcode with black paint. And I love the look, but I just never... I was like, well, I could do this.
Well, it was a nightmare to clean up was the problem, because then you got to go and wipe away the other black. We didn't have the needle applicators that we have now. Right?
Well, but the other thing was okay, I did it with oil paint, and it just turned out that the lacquer paint was also susceptible to the mineral spirits for cleaning it up. And so you're basically as you're cleaning off the extra, you're also wiping off the paint. And it was no, you know what, whatever.
Basically, no one needs to go and get charged for us screwing around for an extra hour trying to make the paint stick. We just made
it's an easy enough thing that you could do yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
And it just wasn't worth the time of me every Every time we had a helmet, just doing that.
It's
it
like
was
do
like
this 40 times. You know, I don't even want to think of like.
no.
I guess we'd get better at it, but it's just.
Yeah, and
it was one of those concessions in order to make the helmet as affordable as possible on what was already an expensive helmet. That got dropped.
And it's like we know that like you could put an isolating clear coat on there, and then you wouldn't have the same issues.
But then that's another hour of waiting for that to dry. And
no, well, for it to fully cure, you're talking about like 2 days.
Yeah, you're right.
For an isolating clear coat.
Yeah, you're right.
And then we would also have issues because it's like, well, okay, maybe you want to do it only on that part.
Yep.
And well, a clear coat's going to change the texture. Which means that now you're going to have just this one part of the helmet that has a slightly different sheen than everything else, and it just wasn't worth it.
No.
I still think it looks really cool, though.
It's cool. Do it on your own helmet if you've got one. It's neat. So, as that evolved, I realized that finishing that surface sucked, so the nameplate became a larger thing that dropped into a slot, and that way, when the ball bearings weren't glued in yet, this curve was much easier to go and finish. And then this dropped in, so that was a good start. But we were still gluing it in, because it's not a load-bearing thing. But I realized I really wanted to be able to go and, like, swap it. If someone out there wants to go and, like, sell off their helmet to someone else for whatever reason, no one needs to go... Someone not named Moffat is going to... They don't need my helmet that says Moffat on it. So we started going and shipping these with a swappable thing, and then you could go and put in a generic UNSC EOL and a barcode on there, which we quite liked, and then that looks basically the same, except these plates now have a little screw on them, and from inside these access panels, you could just go and swap them out. So that's a really big one, just for, I guess, user serviceability, hand-on ability, lend it to your cousin. Careful lending your helmet to cousins. There's still a horror story with that. I keep bringing that up because it still makes me cringe when I think about it. Be wary of that. Circling back 2 conversation points. Speaking of paint, right here, there is a dividing line, and maybe you've noticed this, and maybe you thought it's just the weird lighting down here. At this point, you can tell when our paint was banned in Canada. Because there is a generation of Marines and Marine helmets. They were painted using Tamiya TS28 paint. We loved the color. It's like a nice, rich, but dark olive. It wasn't too glossy. We really like it. It dried super fast. What was annoying about it was it came only in like 30 ml cans. 30 ounce. 30 ounce? No, it's got to be 30 ml because 30 ounces is a lot. Anyway.
It's 100 milliliter net volume.
Okay, 100 milliliter volume cans. Thank you. So we still have a strategic reserve of these. Yeah. Just in case.
Yeah, so if you are an owner of a first generation Suitor helmet, we still have some of this to repaint your stuff.
Just in case you need it. And if you're in America, you might still be able to get it, but
no, it's fine in America.
Yeah. But at some point, environmental safety realized that this was either cooking the environment or our lungs or both. And to be honest, with like the evil licorice smell and the fact that it cured so fast, I'm actually not shocked by that.
It is a lacquer paint.
It's probably good we switched.
Yeah,
it's like
I mean, we wear like respirators and stuff, but holy moly, like
you take off the respirator and it's like I should not have done that. Put it back on. Yeah, especially that one. I remember painting the garage over the winter with that, and it was just evil.
Yeah, it was extremely caustic. It's not. Don't breathe that. Not in any concentration.
Yeah. So we have a new paint that's very similar to the point where I've actually gone and worn this helmet with my old armor, and it's been fine unless you were us and really looking for it. You probably wouldn't notice. But we now use Loup Leche, which is just a delightful rich green, and actually is probably closer to what the Marines have in the game. Because I was playing last night, and they are kind of a shinier, brighter green than this. These have also maybe just faded a little bit over time. But anyway, let's talk about this helmet in front of me. This sucker, I don't even know if you can tell by the way I'm holding it, this is substantially lighter than these other ones, because this is our first PETG carbon fiber helmet.
Yeah, we're back to the FDM printers.
Yeah, exactly. So with substantially nicer FDM printers, we now have 2 Kidi
X-Max 3.
Yeah, it's because everything's named the 3 Max.
Yeah.
We have the X-Max 3 Kidi printers, which are a pretty large format printer for hobby stuff. They do like 32 centimeters, I think. Big enough.
Yeah, they're pretty big. They're not. Are they 32? I don't remember.
32 maybe?
Yeah, anyway. Something like that. They're good.
They're a good sized printer.
Yeah,
we didn't want to go any smaller ones. That's actually the reason we bought these printers right when Bamboo Lab was like spreading like wildfire, and everyone was like, Bamboo, I have the best printers ever. These are amazing. And we didn't buy them because at the time they only had like a 25 centimeter build plate, and that was not adequate for what we wanted to do. So on the Keaties, we have this. So one of the things for lightning in these helmets actually did happen on the resin ones, because I realized we weren't sure how the material would handle being moved around, knocked around, transported. But as we got better resin formulas and did some actual engineering for once instead of just winging it, you can't tell super well in here because of the pads. But we started to make some lightning cuts and hollows in here, which gives you more headspace and room for pads, and also made it significantly lighter than this massive monolithic resin dome of death. But this is substantially lighter again because we're getting our strength from PETG plastic and ingrained carbon fiber. It's allowed to be much lighter. So even with the heavier extra electronics in here, it's still better. So the one thing I'll say for this is this helmet's finish is not as nice as the other ones. This was our test of, let's see what we can get away with. Because we had pretty nice printers. Like, generally we had, the Keaties do an excellent job. But we're like, let's just hose this with paint and see what it looks like. And basically the lesson we learned was, don't do that. From 10 feet away, it looks fine. But by the time you're seeing reflections of it, you can definitely see the layer lines. There's 1 or 2 discontinuities from where a support was on it or something like that. So
it's not awful.
No, it's a perfectly good helmet. But everyone we sell, we're like, okay, we need to put a little putty filler in here and make sure it's nicer than this.
Yeah.
This is like a fine, wear around Halloween costume, take it out to the bar helmet.
Well, technically, that is a costume contest winning helmet.
Okay, fine, you're right. I did wear this when we won Baby's first costume contest. So you're right. It's a nice enough helmet.
I do think that basically right after we finished this helmet, we bought a palm sander.
Yeah.
And the PETG CF, because it's a higher temperature filament, because it's just tougher, really takes the palm sander like a champ. And so we just throw that on everything. It's really great. Does a fantastic job. And that's why the next one in line actually looks a lot better.
Yeah.
There's no hand sanding or anything. We just
No, well, there's. I do.
Well, I'm sorry. Yes, there is some. There is some,
but substantially less than there could be. Which is
good.
Yeah. The level we would have to go and sand this to go and take it to, like, as nice as a resin print is quite a lot of work. And this one I think is actually nicer than some of your resin panels.
Yeah.
To be honest, because the resin one, we're like, well, it's resin. It'll be beautiful. It's gorgeous. We can leave it. And this one, we're like, no, it's going to be smooth.
Well, actually, just like on the resin ones, the pebbling is. I don't know what we were doing, but the pebbling was actually a lot finer.
Yeah, it is.
Even though it was resin, the paint, the Tamiya lacquer paint's very thin. It's good paint, but it's very thin, and together with the really light pebbling, you could actually see a whole bunch of layer lines.
Yeah.
It is definitely like it. You're inspecting it at 2 feet, but they're there.
Yeah.
But now they're gone.
Yeah.
And it's like, I would say, with the sort of using the palm sander and with all of the changes that we've made to the manufacturing, they're sort of like on equal footing in terms of how much work you actually have to do to finish them. Because it's like, resin's gorgeous, but there's a lot of holes you got to fill.
Yeah.
And in the same way, there's a lot of support scarring on plastic, but you can. I don't want to palm sand resin because I don't want to just breathe cancer.
Oh, God.
Well,
plus it might just obliterate it because it gets warm. The same way you can't go and palm sand the PLA because it gets goopy, mushy.
Well,
right?
maybe I don't know. We haven't tried because basically, like, whenever you sand resin, you want to wet sand it because you don't want to breathe that.
Yep.
And you don't
like wet.
Yeah, you don't really use power tools in wet sanding. Maybe you can, but I
haven't tried it yet.
Yeah, I haven't tried it, and I don't really feel like doing it.
Yep. So continuing my roundabout rambling about this helmet. So it's substantially lighter despite the fact it has beefier electronics in it. So this was, again, our first test of the active hearing protection because literally I think someone on TikTok just said it would be cool. I think that was literally how we got to that point.
Well, I think
we've been thinking about it. We've been kind of spiraling around we've been mulling over upgrades to the audio system.
Well, I think the concept of like taking Peltors or whatever, taking them apart and putting them in the helmet had existed for quite a long time.
Yeah, it's like we'd seen people who have done like Mando helmets that way, right, where they drop it in, or like any sort of thing.
Well, I don't think anyone has actually ever done active hearing. But
that's true. But there's been pass-throughs. And
yeah, exactly. For a lot of Star Wars helmets, they have sort of like a pickup on the outside that rebroadcasts to you, so you can actually hear despite wearing a full head helmet.
You're right.
But this was like, we took apart shooting headsets and put them in the helmet.
Yeah. And I think that was literally because a guy on TikTok was like, hey, wouldn't that be neat if you did that? And then actually engaged with us and we talked through it. So thank you, Aiden. I hope you're watching this. But anyway, this thing now, this first try, I still screwed up a little bit. And I guess I should have just done my measurements better or something. The problem is the Marine helmet is deceptive. The Marine helmet does not sit exactly where you think it does on your head. Like, I spent a lot of time looking at Marines in the game. I know when you have the pads in, it sits in about the right spot in your head. But like these things, this is obviously where your ears are. Look at that. That's kind of ear-shaped on the side of your head. That's a lie. Your ear isn't there. Your ear is actually like there. Well, not quite, but it's like the center of your ear is like down here. So where I thought I had tons of room to go and put in a speaker in here and build it into the tombstone with all the space in the world, that was a lie. So you won't be able to see this particularly well. Maybe I can go and cut to some extra shot here. But the speakers had to get moved down substantially. Your ear cups, even wearing this around for too long, my ear cups sat too high on my head, and they kind of pushed into my earlobe instead of actually forming the seal that they should have. So that took a second swing at it. But all the other components of this work, this is where we got our integrated battery power in here, because these shooting headphones obviously need their own power to run. So we just got a AA compartment up there, which is great, lasts fine, and we co-opted. We made our own volume dial because theirs just didn't quite fit in here. But
yeah, I remember because John originally we were just going to use the same volume dial, and it was ever so slightly larger than the slot, and I was like, why don't we just make our own?
Yeah, it's like it's not worth trying to sand away 2 millimeters of plastic every single time we do this.
And it was
just
like
make a resin batch.
And it was like when you looked at the thing, there was like literally like a 1 millimeter, a 1.5 millimeter cutout, and it was just like, but we could just make it the right size.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm glad you sanity checked that one, to be honest.
Yeah.
So this prototype also, again, because we're thinking, okay, if you want to be able to take this airsofting and run around with it, right, you need this to stay on your head. And because these things were just held on with, admittedly, comfortable airsoft pads, they didn't have any ear cups, they didn't have any chin strap. Because in the game, the Marines don't have a chin strap. It's just not there. You never see one with it. But the problem is, if you wanted to go and put this on and bend down to pick something up, it would do kind of a scary little wiggle. And you were never super confident doing that unless it was really suctioned to your head with pads.
I think you lost a screw.
I did lose a screw. It's right here.
Is it one of the glue-in ones, or is that a screw-in?
No, I think actually under this pad, it's just worked itself loose. There's a nut in there. Yeah. Related to that, one of the things is on the original prototype, these little detail screws were glued in because they're not load-bearing. Who cares? Who needs them? And then I'm like, wait a minute, that's dumb. So we just put some hexagon holes to go and slide a nut in there, and then you can screw them in or replace them or repaint them or refinish this surface, again, without having to deal with stainless steel problems in the way. So, yes. So, I think that was the other thing. One of the reasons we went to PETG, or we were looking seriously at PETG, it wasn't because we didn't like the resin. We knew the resin was beautiful. It was a solved problem. But we had people who kept asking us, do we go and take these helmets airsofting? And I go wear the Marine suit airsofting? And we had to be like, I mean, resin shatters when it gets hit. I don't know if that's a good idea. Like, the plastic's probably fine, but it'll get a hole. And we're like, I couldn't recommend it in good conscience. But we've had people do it. I've definitely seen pictures out there of guys on the airsoft field in the Marine armor with their resin helmet, and it obviously survived well enough. I just wouldn't recommend it. So like, let's just make something that we know is a lot tougher, and even if it has like damage to it, it's not going to be like it gets hit and the brow wedge explodes. It's going to be it gets hit and there's a hole or, you know, a little splinter down that you putty up and it's done in...
Or you replace the part.
Yeah, replace the part. Something that just wouldn't catastrophically destroy the entire helmet if it got hit wrong. Mm-hmm. So that was the other reason we went to this, and we figured, well, if we're going to have that aspect, you might as well be able to run around and charge around a field with it. So that was the other big thing with this. We had this chin strap sitting around. It's just a commercial chin strap sitting around for ages. I think maybe when were we looking at that? Anyway, we had this sitting around for a while. I'm like, wait a minute, I have a helmet I can put this in. It was from the last time we looked at making a chin strap from the helmet, but that was like ancient history on the resin. And so we found the same thing. It's just turns out I like black better. So this here is the latest active hearing carbon fiber PETG marine helmet. It's substantially smoother than its cousin. It's a little heavier because now it has a bigger integrated battery pack than just 2 AA's. So it's a little more front heavy, unfortunately, but that's what the pads and the chin strap is for. It still stays on your head fine. And it's still lighter than the poor resin bliss. So this sucker has the latest upgrades. It's got actually nicer gel ear caps in it, which is one of my favorite things.
Well, it was like I love trawling eBay for military surplus parts and whatever to include. And so I got a great deal on a bunch of Gentex flight ear seals. And I was like, oh, okay, that's really cool. And so I designed, all the fitments and whatever, and they're in that one with the green chin strap, and they look great and whatever. And then a seller who had he must have had like hundreds of them, and then I went to go back and buy them, and they were all gone. Yeah, you couldn't find them anymore.
Oh yeah.
And I was like, oh, and so we had to go and
found a new source.
Yeah,
which I really quite like. I think they're
they're so I don't have any shame in saying what they are. They're for David Clark avionics headsets.
Yeah.
And so like the stuff that you would wear as like a NASCAR pit crew or as like a pilot.
Yeah.
Or
it's like they're legit nice.
Oh, they're beautiful. They're really, really nice on your head. They're gel filled. They're nice and puffy, but they're not hard.
Yeah.
Oh, they're fantastic.
Yeah. So that was a good problem to run into because it gave us that last upgrade.
Yeah.
So, I guess other highlights for this thing, just compared to all the old generations, this has kind of combined all these features together now, and even other things because we wanted to go and put our battery container in here. Suddenly, this armor panel needed to come off, and that finally kicked me in the butt to go and separate these parts that have been one single part forever and has always been a pain to mask. And finally, that just gave me another excuse to finish things easily and not have to mask them.
Well, I mean, the amusing thing about that, too, is we had been thinking about that for a long time. And on all the resin ones...
Yeah, it's true. It was not really possible on the resin one.
Well, we could have.
Yeah, I guess.
We could have, but it was one of those things where it was just kind of like not worth doing because it was a legacy design.
Yeah.
And going back and doing surgery on the part file... Because these are not 3D modeled, they're CAD designed.
Yeah,
and
so it was in SolidWorks.
Yeah, so like you're digging back through quite a lot of versions, and there's a lot of features and whatever, and it just, as we hadn't quite learned enough about SolidWorks and making large projects to where you could go back and make a change like that easily.
Yeah, without ruining everything. That's the other thing with these helmets is, again, like I said at the beginning, this was like a 3-week fever dream.
I thought you did it way faster.
Yeah, I think it went from, oh, I should really try the helmets because we were thinking about just ditching them because it was going to be complicated. I think it was from start to we had helmets was 3 weeks. I think that was actually it. Maybe even less. I should check.
Because we were sanding and painting the helmets the day before the con.
God, we were.
We were. Right, and in fact, I think we did a little bit of painting the morning of.
You probably did.
I think we did.
I'll have to go look for the photos, but you're right. So I was 3.5 years substantially less experienced with digital design. I was obviously good enough to get this together, but there was some. Don't look at the feature tree. Don't think about it. And then as that evolves, and we started cutting things up. And things got shifted around and cut apart and re-optimized and re-strengthened. Don't look at the feature tree.
Yeah.
Because I was better at SolidWorks, but I was still starting from that base of don't worry about it, and then piling on some, it's probably fine. And then by the time we're here, it's like I'm looking back going, what have I done? Now by here, it's still a piled mess under the hood, but we know a lot. It's not going to get us that bad ever again.
best practices were definitely developed and adopted
Yeah,
through
exactly.
this.
Yes, this has been a learning experience of a helmet as it's continued to evolve. But the nice thing is we've gotten substantially nicer helmets out of it.
Yes.
So, yeah, I guess the last interesting generational thing about this is let me just turn this on. There you go. So this now has a Bluetooth board in the back that will go and connect to whatever you happen to like, your phone, your computer, your I've already made the joke, but I'm going to say it again, your Warthog radio. So you can go and blast your Poco.
This should connect to my car.
I don't see why not. It's
right?
just a Bluetooth thing. It's like literally a Bluetooth headset like you would have on your phone.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So what's nice about this is this was being developed for a while as I was kind of like fishing around looking for things. The problem we found is a lot of stuff has like one-way Bluetooth where it will play music or you can send voice, but it's actually really hard to go and get both. So we managed to go and find some products that we could tear apart and modify and plug in here to go and make them talk nicely to whatever, both ways. And I can vouch that last night I was literally playing the Halo 3 campaign just for kicks while in a Discord call with my friend, and all the audio was working fine.
Yeah,
so.
We had, for a little while, we had been kicking around the idea of just disassembling a Bluetooth headset.
Yes.
But
we learned that disassembling headsets is kind of annoying.
I mean, and we still do it, actually.
Yeah, we still do with the shooting headsets, but they're easier to work with. Their wiring is nicer. It's just...
Yeah. And it
could have gone that
well, I mean, but the thing is, like, once we had settled on the using the active hearing, because it is really nice, in the same way that, like, those Star Wars cosplayers will have the pickups externally, the active hearing protection, like, the external pickup for it is fantastic for going to cons.
Yeah, it's built
the fact that it protects you from high decibel sounds, just a bonus.
Yeah.
It's a huge bonus.
Yeah.
But like functionally it's awesome. They're really good quality speakers and everything. But it also meant that when we adopted that, we now would have huge wastage if we bought a Bluetooth headset.
Yeah, and needed to put it on.
Yeah, and it just wasn't worth it. And it was only once we finally found some nice drop-in components
that could fit.
And they were the right size, and it just like it all kind of lined up really nicely.
Yeah, once we found that part, then like the Bluetooth helmet together just came like that.
Well, it basically made it possible.
Yeah. Right, and I guess then I spent a while screwing around with USB cables because I couldn't find.
Well, but fundamentally, when you're sitting down and you're thinking like, this just has to connect to this and this and this and this, and then it should work. Right. It turned it from like this is possible or not possible to this is possible, and it was just then wiring it correctly.
Yeah.
And we had our own John. Not I shouldn't say our because it was really John soldiering all. But it was
You were just working on the Imperial Guard helmet.
Yes, I was doing like parallel development.
As I was putting this helmet together, the Bluetooth one together. Ian was sitting next to me working on the Imperial Guard helmet. I think within 15 minutes of each other before Christmas, we like got our prototypes working.
Yeah, they were both working together. Unfortunately, the Imperial Guard one doesn't have Bluetooth yet, but it will. It will.
We know how the module's going to go. So that's fine. Yeah. Now that we know, this was kind of the Pathfinder, because originally, we weren't even thinking I should even talk about this. Do we have a twirly cord around somewhere?
Oh, yeah, we do.
Quick, cut the video. Okay, resume the video.
Hang on.
Remember one in my bin? We had this prepared on hand and definitely didn't have to cut there. This is what we call the twirly cord, and it's literally just an aux cable, but we like the look of it. So for all of these other helmets that had to plug in, obviously because it wasn't wireless, we needed to go and connect this to your phone or to your computer, whatever you're using it for. So if we're going to have a plug there anyway, the first helmets had the jack coming out of the bottom. And that was nice and low profile, and it kind of comes down out of the way, and that's pretty good. The problem was, if you're wearing a Marine costume with this, the Marine has the really big collar armor, and depending on how that sits on you and how your pads are in here, Ian and I had problems where it would bonk, especially when we first put on the suit and it hadn't all kind of quite settled in yet. It would be kind of annoying to go and turn your head to the right, or it'd be like, why is my neck sore? Because I've been holding my head kind of tilt ways for a while. So this changed probably later than it should have, but eventually it wound up getting changed into this, where this comes out the back here. And I liked the really low profile one because it just blended in with the lines of the helmet. This was a concession that this is just so much nicer to work with. All right, and it still just comes down over your shoulder. For the record, the reason we use the twirly cord is because it's kind of 80s alien-y. It's got that look of, nice, I guess at this point, retro military hardware. But it's like the Halo 3 Marines especially are very much a love letter to the Aliens Marines. Like as we look through those costumes, we thought about doing those costumes ages ago too.
Oh yeah, when we first sat down and we're like, we love costumes. Let's make costumes. And we wrote down a big list of all the various things we were interested in. And, there was like Jaffa from Stargate. There were Halo Marines. There were Rebels, Endor Rebels, Hoth Rebels.
Yep.
There's
a million things
Colonial
Marines. And as we were kind of looking at these things, we're like, actually, as we spent more and more time looking at the Halo Marines, we're like, oh, people here liked aliens. And that's a good thing. But we like this because it just really fits that sort of look of, 80s, 90s, solid, chunky enough plug-in, goes into a pouch on the front of your web kit. That was great. We were happy with that. But we realized if we're going wireless, we might as well actually go wireless. So that's where the integrated power came in, right? So this thing, it can go and just run off of your battery pack. It still has to charge, of course. So here's a charging port if you're using a power pack. Or again, if you're just using battery cells, then congratulations, you still need a power plug into it. But that was the other big change.
The other thing too was like the won't it work for connecting to your device.
Oh yeah,
because there are different plug standards between different devices, and it was to make it more consistent. The Bluetooth is just better.
Yeah, what's wild is actually the Bluetooth. I was worried about Bluetooth because I am old. Like, we're not that old, but we're old enough to have been around when like Bluetooth started and everything sucked with Bluetooth.
Yeah, exactly.
So I remember the nightmares of trying to go and connect Bluetooth to iPods, and like it was just a nightmare. I was like, oh, I don't want to put that on our helmet. But actually, because we know that everything in here talks to the Bluetooth transceiver, and that's going to talk nicely to whatever you connect it to, it's actually more reliable than we've had. I'm pretty sure that my aux jack on my phone is like reversed of yours. I think that's
you might, because it's like the
think that would be standardized, but there is definitely something amiss.
Yeah, the standard, like the TRRS standard, is also reversed for some devices, and some of them don't even have it. Like some of them are like only mono sound. It's hard to predict sometimes which ones are going to work.
Yeah.
But we've hit that time in the world where most devices have Bluetooth, and it's just actually easier.
Doesn't suck.
Yeah.
Sorry, that sounds bad. I'm supposed to be eager about this. Genuinely, I am blown away by how easy it is to connect to this Bluetooth. I was like, when I was down here and we had all the wires and just sitting in a field of USB parts, trying to go and get this thing together, and I was like, well, let's see if it connects to the phone, and it did it in like 3 seconds. The light turned blue and it made its little chime, and I'm like,
and the audio quality was good.
Oh, we're in the future.
Yeah, it was nice.
I take it home and I disconnect from my phone and I connect to my computer in 3 seconds and I go play Halo on it. I had to go and change one audio setting because a lot of the time with Bluetooth on my computer, at least, it'll list it twice where it's like the speakers and then like the hand-free headset.
Oh yeah.
So I had to go and make one menu change on my computer, but my phone has never had a problem with it.
I think that I've had some friends who've had that problem where it's like one is like a lower quality.
Yes.
Like a lower rate. And
it's very weird.
Yeah.
But if you go into your sound settings and you switch to the other one, then it's there and it works just fine. Literally, I've not had a problem on this thing.
Yeah. Much better than going like, why does this wire not connect to this other one?
Yeah. Yes. I guess the one last thing I should mention about this, talking about troubleshooting things, is we should have done this literally 40 helmets ago. Like, on this prototype, I don't know, well, no, I know why it's not on this prototype, because this prototype I made half in secret. Ian didn't know that I had it done, and I painted it in my apartment, and that was a mistake. But my wife and I are still together, and it's fine. We had some fans out the window and blew it out. But anyway, finally, we went and got every single electronic component in here has plugs and is modular, so we can go and test components individually and replace them as we need. It's so much nicer, and I'm like honestly embarrassed that like even our later resin helmets don't have that. No one has asked us that, hey, I need a repaired microphone. No one has come to us. So obviously we put them together well enough that they're still working, but it's like if you needed to replace a component, you'd have to go and like retwist the wires yourself, snip and strip, and that's kind of annoying. Now we can literally say, oh, I'm sorry that your microphone broke because you whacked it or something really hard with your battle rifle. Who knows? Right now we can just send you an envelope with a microphone in it and you'll plug in. So future proof. Everything is much better this way, and we're integrating that into all of our stuff. We're integrating that into the Imperial Guard helmet, and we're integrating it into this little green guy behind me, but don't worry about that.
Actually, no, that's the non.
That's the old one.
Sorry. You got to pick up.
We're integrating it into this gentleman, but don't worry about that. That's still a little ways off. Don't hold your breath, but it's getting there. But really, this helmet with the Bluetooth was the pathfinder for a lot of these other things we're interested in, because a really big thing I found is in the twirly cord is cool. We like the aesthetic. It feels good. It feels aliens. The Marines are okay because they're not main characters. They always either have their helmet on or off. But in a cutscene or something like that, a lot of the time, Chief or an ODST, they just gotta put their helmet on and take off. And we really, really wanted that. We didn't want to have to go and like futz with unplugging yourself to take your helmet off and having to plug it in again. We just wanted to be able to put it on and run. And that's now where we're at.
The twirly cord was kind of a concession because it was like, how do we add sound to this? And we weren't at the very early stage willing to tear apart a Bluetooth set.
No.
And so it was like, okay, we're going to do a wired one. How do we make a wired headset look like it belongs? And It was like, okay, we'll use the twirly cord because it looks like aliens. So it was kind of like the twirly cord.
I still like the look.
Oh no, it still looks cool, and it's like when it's wired up to your pouch, it's all fine. And I would put that down to like the thematics of the devs looking at aliens and saying, this is where this is from. And so we took from the same spot to make it look okay.
Yeah.
But ultimately the Bluetooth was where it should have always gone to.
Yeah.
And now it's there.
Yeah. I'm very excited to go and just throw this into everything, honestly.
Oh, it's beautiful.
So
it's absolutely beautiful.
There's some other things I should talk about. We talked about these goggles.
Oh, yeah, I guess you could say what they are.
Oh, yeah, I guess. So we planned to have these goggles for ages, obviously, and at some point we just said, if people want to go and take these things airsofting, that was actually what really spurred a lot of this PETG stuff, was kind of our next kick of how do we go and make this so I don't go, and sure, and change it to, be careful. It's not metal, but you could probably do it. It won't destroy itself. If we wanted to do that, people have been asking us about the goggles forever, actually. Basically, since we probably sold our first Marine helmets. People were like, oh, are you going to make the goggles on those? I was like, yeah, it's on the list. And finally, we're like, okay, if people take these airsoft that actually solved our problem. Because we're like, we're going to go and use airsoft-rated lenses. Because we know there's orange glasses out there, and we're going to go and adapt these. And we found these beautiful lenses, which we can get new. They're kind of expensive because they're micro-ballistic lenses.
Yeah, I don't really mind saying what they are.
They're soft-fly lenses. They're good.
They're really nice. Like these are actually the first ones that we bought were all Canadian Forces secondhand.
Yeah.
And they just, they were really nice and cheap. And I saw them and they were orange and they were about the right profile. It was like, wait a second, this is like the skies opening up. Yeah. This is the moment. Yeah. And I think they were like $9 a pair, and we bought all of them.
Yeah, for those used ones. Now of course we have to go and buy them new, so they're more expensive by a long shot. But it got us through that first prototyping section, which was good. It let us say, these work, we can do it, and if you don't mind having 2 scratches on your visor, take them wherever you want. But yeah, no, these are really great. The only problem is because we've made our own frames and haven't, gone to any official testing agency, we can't officially guarantee any ballistic rating on these because we know the lens is good, the frame we've engineered to be strong, but it technically hasn't been tested in that official environment. So,
it's the same
legal disclaimer. Careful with these, and also depending on how it is, if you want to take these to an airsoft field, they might have problems because they're not officially rated.
Yeah, I don't think they would let you do it.
Your mileage may vary.
Yeah, generally airsoft fields require full seal goggles.
Yeah.
So
because these plug into the helmet and don't sit directly on your face, you might just want to buy yourself a pair of Revision softfly goggles. If you really want to be safe, that's probably your.
And I would always advocate being safe. Like, please don't sue us.
Yes. No, I really don't need. Like, yeah.
And I mean, that's the same thing. For the active hearing protection. It's like we've actually had a customer take his helmet shooting, and so obviously it worked for him, but we can't guarantee the noise reduction because, again, we haven't taken these to an official testing station. We can't make those guarantees. They're adapted from products that have guarantees.
But because we've cracked the shell and rearranged the guts, there's actually more noise canceling foam in here than comes in those headsets. But it's not just about the noise canceling foam. It's about how it sits on your head, that sort of thing. Yeah. This makes a tight seal on most people's heads because there's just a reasonably tight helmet. But again, here's our less fun disclaimer. Don't try this at home, kids. Use proper safety equipment when you're going airsofting. But I can say this should not catastrophically fail if you shoot it with an airsoft gun. How about that? But yeah, if I were really clever and good, I would have been recording this on this helmet the whole time, and then you wouldn't have been able to hear Ian as well. But this is the latest generation of our Halo Marine helmet. I've rambled about it for far too long now. But if you found that interesting, we've got an awful lot of other stuff to go ramble about too, between upcoming projects, the entire bit of, other marine stuff that has even more to talk about than just the helmets. And we'll be back to talk about that at some point. Cheers!